right, so we are back for the season finale of Three Body Problem. I know I promised I was going to try to do an episode every day, but I ended up spreading over a couple of weeks. I don't understand how people who do this on the regular do it. It's pretty exhausting, actually, to do these reaction videos and then think about them and then edit them and all that stuff. But we're almost through it. I did have a couple of thoughts on the last few episodes while I was waiting to do this one. About ways that humans could counteract the Santi given what we've been told. One of those is a little bit complicated, involves a kind of lecture, and the other one is much more straightforward. So we'll start with the much more straightforward one. We're told that the Santi have trouble with lies, that they're a species that doesn't lie and so forth. That would also mean they have trouble understanding fiction and metaphor and so forth. So it seems to me one of the things that humans could do is develop a means of communication that is going to be incomprehensible to a species like that, communicating in metaphor and simile and cultural references that the Santi may not have. Those of you who are Star Trek The Next Generation fans will find this sounding familiar. One of the better episodes of the series is called Darmok. And in that episode, the Enterprise crew is able to translate the language of an alien species pretty easily, but they don't understand it because that species doesn't speak directly in declarative sentences. They speak in references to a cultural tradition, referencing a long history of stories and tales that they understand and the Enterprise crew doesn't have the context for. So even though they understand the words of the language, they don't understand the context of the language. And we have something a little bit like that if you've ever been on the internet with memes and so forth. People will post memes and responses and clips from videos that don't necessarily speak straightforward in words but convey a meaning. My brother and I like to joke sometimes that one day we will be able to communicate entirely in Simpsons quotes. And so we do have some sort of basis for that. So developing a means of communication that uses metaphor and simile and especially cultural references that the Santi may not be able to understand because they don't have that capacity would be a way to get around that communications barrier. I think that is what is being hinted at in UNJ's joke at the end of the last episode, that she's trying to communicate something using a metaphorical language that the Santi couldn't grab in case those sophons happen to be in the area, but that Saul might be able to understand. So we might see more built on that. The other thing I thought about was, they're trying to destroy our science and especially our particle physics by interfering with particle accelerators. As an astronomer, I see this a little differently. This is a picture of the cosmic microwave background. It is the universe's baby picture. Whenever we look into space, we are looking backwards in time. Well, how far back can we look? And this cosmic microwave background is the limit of how far we can look. It's light that was emitted when the universe was 300,000 years, about 13.7 billion years ago. Beyond that, there's still a universe that we could theoretically see, but we can't. Because before 300,000 universe, the universe was so hot and dense
The whole universe was in a hot, dense state
that it was opaque to light. So the universe was emitting light, it just didn't get anywhere. And so we can't see those early phases of the universe. So how do we know what was happening? How do we know what went on in the first 300,000 years after the Big Bang, where we can now get it down to the tiniest fraction of a second after the Big Bang that we understand? Well, there's three means. One is that this cosmic background, it looks random, but it's not. There are patterns in it, certain typical distances between those red and blue spots that tell us things about the early universe, the shape of the universe, the contents of the universe, and so forth, that this would look very different depending on what kind of universe we lived in. So the cosmic background already gives us a hint of what was going on. There's also theoretical physics that we can understand what was going on in the universe because it was a comparatively simple system so that the physics are a little bit more straightforward. For example, the universe is 3/4 hydrogen and 1/4 helium. We understand why it is that way because we understand the centers of stars where you have very high temperatures that cause hydrogen to fuse into helium and power stars. In the early phases of the universe, the first 20 minutes or so, it was so hot and dense, it was like the interior of a star. And at first it was pure hydrogen, and eventually that fusion created lots of helium and a little tiny bit of lithium. And so we can predict those fundamental components of the universe and get an idea of that our theoretical astrophysics is right and we are under our understanding of the early universe when it was that hot and dense is correct. The other way is particle accelerators. Particle accelerators, when they smash particles together, are recreating for a very tiny instant in a very tiny part of space the conditions that existed in the very early Big Bang. And so it is interesting that when you want to understand things on the biggest scales, the entire universe, some of the biggest insights come from studying things on the tiniest scales, subatomic particles smashing together in particle colliders. Now, I don't know that this would actually work, and it would be a bass-ackwards way of doing things, but if your particle accelerators are compromised, looking at the early universe, looking at that cosmic background, looking at the contents of the universe, and trying to reason backwards to the underlying particle physics might be an approach that you could take. I don't understand the theoretical physics enough to know whether that would actually work, but it'd certainly be worth a try. They can't sabotage our telescopes and our particle accelerators at the same time. So, turn the question around. See if something about the cosmos will tell you things about particle physics, just as right now particle physics tell us things about the universe. So those are my thoughts going into this. So let's just dive in. This is the season finale, episode 8 of Three Body Problem.
It's a silver Prius. What's it?
All right, that looked intentional.
Nora.
I'm guessing this means, and among other things, the Santi still have traitors in a fifth column among human race.
And someone tries to murder you.
No one tried to murder me. There was an accident.
The car that hit Nora was under autonomous control. It was self-driving.
I know what autonomous means.
The two cars that collided on the street were under autonomous control. We've reason to believe that someone or something hacked into the onboard computers of all three cars seconds before the accident, with further reason to believe that they were targeting you.
He doesn't know why they might have targeted him for killing. It's clear that Wade's group doesn't know why he was targeted, but the fact that he was targeted, they're going to respond to that to try to figure out what the Santi intend and what they can do about that. I agree. I like the way this is playing out, where this is a chess game where one side can see all the pieces and the other side has to guess where they are.
All right, I'm gonna sleep. I suggest you do too.
Big day ahead of you.
Fighter escort, they're not taking any chances.
And we must defend ourselves. To them, we are an open book, one they can read anytime.
Oh, that's
Humanity
CCH
has no
Pounder.
secrets.
I knew I
Every
recognized her.
meeting, every
She's
conversation,
great.
the memory of every computer. The sophons see and hear whatever they want, whenever they choose. The sophons have vast power, but they are not all powerful. They cannot read our minds. This
That's
is
true.
the basis of what we call the Wall-Facer Project. We have chosen 3 people to formulate and direct strategic plans. They will develop these plans entirely in their own minds, sharing them with no one, until the time is right to execute. These wall facers will be granted great authority, allowing them to exploit all our resources.
I said earlier that this was like a chess game where one side can see all the pieces and the other side can't. This is concealing our pieces, saying, all right, we're going to have someone who is keeping this in their mind, does stuff, can even do random stuff, just a distraction, and the sophons and the Santi are going to have to try to guess what they're doing. I really like what they're doing here. I think it's a great idea.
Nations. And finally, the third wall facer, Sol Durand.
please.
Isn't it Dr. Durand?
Saul Durand.
Yeah, it is. I wonder why they keep calling him Doctor, Mr.
An Oxford-trained physicist who has studied with some of the greatest minds alive.
That actually touches on something. I usually don't insist on people using doctor when they call me, but I do know people who do. And sometimes it's women and minorities who have trouble being taken seriously in some contexts. So this not calling him doctor makes me a little bit uneasy here.
So, why were you chosen? Let's just say the enemy knows why.
I'm not special.
They think you are.
They? The enemy? No one asked me if I wanted this. No one explained anything to me.
If we had asked you, would you have come?
Of course not.
That's why we didn't ask.
I refuse.
You may.
But it's an interesting conversation, but I do love what she says here. The sophons and the Santi clearly think he's a danger. So again, this back and forth of trying to play out the strategy, I like it.
You've got one broken rib, a little internal bleeding. It's not bad, considering you got shot by a 338 sniper round.
You saved my life.
Bulletproof coveralls saved your life. You want to see the guy that tried to kill you. Why?
Know your enemy. Didn't Sensu say that?
I don't know, I'm from Manchester.
I want to talk to him. You tried to murder a man that you've never met on the directive of aliens that you've never met. Why? What the f*** is wrong with you?
I've gone to be a soldier in the army of the Lord.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if he rejects the wall facer position. They'll think that's just him playing the game. Once he's been named, he's it.
You've ruined my life. And now you're giving me this.
And I'm sorry, truly.
What's the indirect reason?
I believe you'll know when the time is right. It's been a pleasure to meet you again, Mr. Durand.
Dr. Durand!
In the future, Mr. Kent will take care of anything that you need.
Oh, murder girl. I wonder what had happened to her. Oh, is it your turn to get murdered now?
Capsule secured. Payload telemetry interleaved and nominal. Fairing is sealed and ready for launch. Receiving green status from all 300 bombs. All units are in position for probe trajectory. All stations
I
report.
mean, I think it would have taken a couple years for them to launch and get all those bombs into the proper position. So they're clearly accordioning the time scale
Go
here.
for launch. We are ready to resume terminal countdown.
Why did you change your mind?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
I have a feeling this is not gonna go terribly well. Being a bit reminded of the JWST launch of a couple of years ago, where it was a very nervous time that it launched, and then it had to deploy in this very precise way that not everybody was convinced was going to work. So I think, I wonder, I realized this was in the book first, well before JWST was launched, but I wonder if the way they're playing this out has some influence from that. This is moving a bit slow, but I do like that with space travel, it's going to take, as she said, hours to get to the first explosive, and this is going to play out over a long time. So that does give a lot of time to worry about whether this thing is going to happen. Again, the parallels to JDOST, where it launched and it was going to be a while before we knew whether it was going to work or not. I think if anything, this is understating just how huge you could make a solar sail this way.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
No sound on the explosions. Nice.
First detonation successful. Navigation indicates the capsule is traveling at 57 kilometers per second.
Oh, there we go. I mean, still going roughly in the right direction. If the Santee really wanted to, they could probably divert and intercept. Question is if they want to. Hey, it's Editing Mike. I'm a few weeks after I recorded this video, and it occurred to me I didn't have enough commentary on this scene since it is one of the most important and scientifically interesting scenes in the episode. There are a few things that I think it does wrong, although I understand why it does them. One of the things it does is that you would want to have a long period of time between those successive explosions precisely to anticipate these kind of anomalies and be able to potentially correct for them on the fly. When I described this in my previous video, I said it would be like Project Medusa, that the sail would go out because of the explosion and then slowly reel in the capsule so that you don't get these sudden impulses that would apply forces of 1,000 Gs and destroy everything in the spacecraft. They're compressing it because it's a TV show, so I understand that. But in real life, you probably want to spread this out, which of course means that it would take years and years to deploy the explosive charges in the first place in order to get them there. One of the questions that occurred to me was, well, you're setting off these nuclear explosions. Why doesn't that destroy the sail? Why doesn't it destroy the capsule since they're so close? You'd probably have them a little bit further away, but in principle, this wouldn't actually be a problem because you don't have air. You're not going to create this massive shock wave that's going to destroy everything in its path. You're going to have heat, which isn't going to really bother the solar sail. You're going to have radiation, which the solar sail is going to love. That's what's giving you propulsion. As long as you have enough shielding or the capsule is far enough back that it's not going to be affected by the immediate radiation pulse, you're probably going to be okay. And the other thing that's a little bit inaccurate is when the line breaks, it immediately goes off the path. That's actually not going to happen that way because the explosion has gone off. You've gotten that impulse. Now, if you're reeling it in that process, that's when those lines being broken is going to throw you off. Or if you have another explosion, it's going to throw it off asymmetrically. And so that's when it will deviate. But those bit of artistic licenses to make the TV show better aside, I do think this scene does pretty well. It shows a really good example of how you would do this. It is visually nice. It shows no sound in space, and it shows the response of the people on the ground that you're just receiving this telemetry, and it's all indirect, and you don't necessarily know what's happening right away. And so overall, I think the scene works quite well, despite having a few little niggling issues.
We'll always be with you. Every room you enter, we'll already be there waiting for you. Whatever we want you to see, you will see. Until the day you die.
Okay, a couple thoughts on that scene. One, he's right. If they're messing with him, they must fear that he's going to find a way to defeat them. And two, don't tell me you're a race that doesn't know how to lie when you do crap like that.
Spray pesticides from planes, we put poison in the ground, we try and sterilize them, we swat them, zap them, step on them. Look around. They're not going anywhere. For the bugs. Let's get back. We've got work to do.
Yeah, you still got 400 years to come up with another try. That episode was probably, and a lot happened, but it kind of moved a little slow for me. It seemed to be taking its time, like they needed to fill out the 60 minutes and they only had enough plot for 45 minutes. I do
this
like...
was an evil crime.
All right, let's turn you off. All right, so let's break this down into two reviews. First as a series and then as a science. And the two concepts overlap a bit. First, as a series, I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was well written, well paced, well directed. It cost a lot of money and it's all up there on the screen. It looks really great. What really I liked was the acting. I don't think there was really a weak performance among them. And there were several, I mean, I've mentioned Liam Cunningham and Benedict Wong did very good. But Rosalind Cho, I thought, was fantastic as Yuan Jie. I didn't know until someone pointed in the comments that she was Keiko from DS9. And I didn't recognize her, but she was really great. I thought Jess Hong as Jin Chung was excellent. I thought Alex Sharp as Will Downing was also very good. So those are the ones that really stood out to me as the strongest performances. And we'll see a lot of those in season 2, apparently, because I guess it's already been renewed for season 2. And so I'm very interested to see where this goes. As I said, I have not read the book, so I can't really make those comparisons. A lot of you in the comments have talked about the Chinese language series and the book and the comparisons. I'm kind of glad I hadn't read the book because I like to evaluate a series as a series. I'm sure there were subtleties and nuances and details that the book goes into that the series does not. The series has to do a different thing. It has to create the characters. It has to make you care about the characters. It has to put the actors in the forefront of the action rather than the plot. And I think it did a good job of that. I'm intent to read the book very soon. And so I will see if I have any more thoughts on that. And hopefully I'll get some time to watch the Chinese language series as well to make a comparison. But just evaluating it on its own, I think it worked quite well. I think the plot was nice and lean. It held together very well. Almost everything was explained by the end of the series. Yes, I had some issues with those explanations, but I think it all fit together quite well. And in the end, I found myself satisfied with the series and looking forward to season 2. Now, scientifically, my biggest rant was on the sophons and how unrealistic I thought they were. But again, that deals with extremely complicated scientific concepts. Even though it's wrong in interesting ways. I really liked the Project Staircase. I thought that was a really good plan based on what they have available. And so I'm looking forward to what other plans they come up with in the future series. There's a few I've thought of that they might want to consider, but we'll see where the series goes with this. But on a scientific basis, I've already talked about all of that more in depth on the previous episodes. The one thing I haven't talked about, though, is I like the way this series looks at alien invasion. One of the things that drives me nuts is when you have aliens invading and they're coming here for our water. There's water abundantly in the universe. Even in our own solar system, there's more water on the moons of Jupiter than there is on Earth. And the moons of Jupiter are not occupied by nuclear-armed apes. And so that would make much more sense. Or they're coming here for our gold, or they're coming here for some oxygen or some other resource that is abundantly available in the universe. The only thing that makes Earth unique is, one, we're here. So it would make sense for an alien race to invade if they're rabidly xenophobic and just want to destroy any other life that they're competing with. And based on the title of the second novel in the series, I think that's part of what's going on here. And the other thing is Earth is particularly stable. It's not just in the Goldilocks zone around our star. Its orbit is very stable. The climate is very stable. The star we are around is very stable. And so this creates one of the first times I've seen a realistic reason for aliens to invade. They are in a system that is not stable. They are on a planet that is eventually going to kill them one way or another. And so they want our territory. And we happen to be particularly close. There are probably hundreds of billions of planets in the habitable zone or in the galaxy. Maybe billions of them are stable, but we're the closest to them, and so they're coming here. And so that's a really fresh and original spin on this. And I think of all the scientific things this brings to the table, that I think is the most unique and the most that I hope other science fiction series will learn from. We tend to think of alien invasions in terms of past conflicts involving humans, that we want space to live in. We want to convert them to our religion. We want to take their gold. We want to take their resources. And when you're dealing with potential alien interactions between humans and an extraterrestrial species, you have to sort of throw that out the window. It's not the same because our biology is different. Our motives are different. Our psychology might be different. And so this was, I think, did a really great job of setting up this conflict between humans and alien species and rooting it in sound scientific principles and sociological principles that I think could actually potentially happen. I think it's extremely unlikely. From what we know, the universe is not teeming with life, and there is no life within 4 light years of us. But I do like the way it goes about that. So not much else to say. The music was great. As I said, the acting was great. The directing was fine. I liked that they didn't have at any point the idiot plot. Characters make bad decisions. Characters make indefensible decisions, but they have reasons for those decisions. And it seemed like a good idea at the time they make those decisions. And so it's really refreshing to see a series that drives its plot through decisions and conflict and science rather than people being stupid and doing things for dumb reasons. One of the most profound insights about plot that I ever heard from came from, I believe it was the creators of South Park actually, who said that in a good plot, A causes B to happen, which causes C to happen, which causes D to happen. There is a flow of events that go from a decision or an event at the beginning and consequences and consequences and consequences, that you have this flow to the plot. In a bad plot, things just happen. People do things randomly because you need it for the plot to happen. There's a YouTube channel called Pitch Meetings where they discuss that, where they'll come into a plot issue and they'll say, well, we need that because we need the movie to advance. And that happens surprisingly often. I think this was really well plotted, where everything flows from Yi Wen-jae's decision to contact the aliens, and every decision that people make has consequences downstream. And it all fits together so that there's not just random things being thrown into the plot. Yes, random things happen. The spaceship goes bad, for example. But, those are more of known risks becoming real tragedies, rather than just random things happening because we need it to happen for the plot. So it's well done. It's not, I don't think it's like the best series of the year or anything like that, but I would rate it probably a 7 or an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. And in terms of face palms for scientific accuracy, probably 1.5 or maybe 1. And the sophons are a bit exaggerated. That was the biggest thing, but everything else works really well. And I think it did a pretty good job. And even the sophons, that's really high-end science. So even though they got it wrong, I think it is very interesting. So that's my review of episode 8 and the series. I don't know if I'll be doing these live reactions again. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it. It did seem to be kind of popular, and I got a lot of positive responses. So if another series comes up like this that I think is interesting enough to do a live reaction, maybe I'll do it. Although I'll probably spread it out over a bit more time because it is a bit exhausting. So I have a number of things in the hopper that I'm hoping to get accomplished in the next couple months. But until we talk again, I'm Mike Siegel. I write for Ordinary Times. Thank you so much for watching.